I'm speaking with Julio Ojeda-Zapata, tech columnist for the Pioneer Press and author of Twitter Means Business and most recently iPad Means Business. So the iPad 2 was just released. Why don't you tell me about Twitter Means Business, or iPad Means Business, excuse me.
Well, iPad Means Business sort of takes the same approach as Twitter Means Business, which basically explains how the iPad can be used as a business tool, as a productivity tool. For people who are traveling and don't want to lug a laptop around, the iPad, in many cases, can be a workable substitute. So the book does several things. It profiles large companies, small companies, entrepreneurs, educational institutions that have integrated the iPad or are using the iPad, for work-related, productivity-related stuff. And then other parts of my book are about my own use of the iPad. Like there's a chapter that's an entire trip I took with the iPad, and the good and the bad, the problems I ran into when the iPad really worked really well and when I missed not taking a laptop. So
right. Well,
that was kind of an adventure.
That was a fascinating part of the book. So what were just a few of the highlights and lowlights of using it on a business trip?
Well, actually the iPad worked well. I was able to do everything that I needed to do, but in many cases I had to get creative. Like there weren't and still aren't very many apps for bloggers. Blogging apps generally are terrible, and so I had to sort of figure out a different way to blog. And so you and I both use Posterous, and I ended up just emailing in my posts.
Right.
That worked really well in Posterous, but I was on a work-related trip, and I needed to blog for the Pioneer Press tech blog, not Posterous.
Right.
But Posterous again saved the day because I can post to Posterous, and Posterous will just kick it over to my work blog.
Oh, nice.
So that worked really well.
Yeah.
Word processing, like I needed to write stories for the paper, but at the time, Google Apps was read only on the iPad browser. You couldn't edit.
Okay.
So that was really frustrating. So I'm a big Google Apps user.
Yeah.
But what I ended up doing was switching to a program called Simple Note.
Okay.
And Simple Note is excellent because it's a plain text editor, but as you're typing, it saves everything to the cloud. And so you don't have to worry about losing anything because everything gets backed up instantly. In fact, I tried a fun little parlor trick. I was at Panera in San Francisco, and I actually had taken 2 iPads on this trip just for redundancy, and just for giggles, I set up both iPads, and then I typed something in Simple Note on one iPad, and went up to the cloud, and then I refreshed on the other iPad, and whoosh, the text came right down.
That's fantastic.
So that, so I had to ditch my normal way of working in some cases and do something different to sort of get around the iPad's inherent limitations.
Right.
But the bottom line is I successfully took an iPad on a business trip, and it did everything that it needed to do.
Cool. So the iPad 2 is out. Are you gonna have an update to your book for?
Absolutely. I expect to have an iPad 2 in my hands, a review unit next week, and very shortly thereafter, possibly as early as a week from Monday, I'm going to whip out an add-on chapter for the book, send that to my publisher, and then my publisher will sort of tack it on to the ebook versions of the book so that the book will be up to date.
Nice.
Yeah. So.
So what you know of the iPad 2? Does it still mean business?
The camera is going to be kind of important in a business setting because the whole web conferencing thing is very important in business. Video conferencing,
right.
Talking to people at our different locations.
Yep.
That's gonna be huge.
Yep.
Using Skype or what on the iPad will be important. But the other side of that is the personal. Like when I go on a business trip, when I've gone on business trips in the past with a laptop, I've always done a video chat with my son at bedtime. So I talked to my son.
Right.
We could see each other. And that trip that I took with the iPad was hugely frustrating because I didn't have that capability. I was only audio.
Okay.
You can plug a USB headset into the iPad via a USB adapter that Apple sells. So that works very well for Skype audio, but there's obviously no video option.
Yeah.
So having that camera on the iPad 2 to be able to talk to a loved one when I'm not in the same location with that person I cannot tell you how big that is, and so people have asked me, would you buy the iPad 2 at full price, or get one of the original iPads at bargain basement prices, because they're going really cheap right now, and hands down, I'd pay the extra money just to have the camera.
Right. So what really excites you aside from that about the new features that are going to be on the iPad?
Well, it has an all-new processor. It's faster.
Mm-hmm.
The graphics capabilities are better. So just under the hood, it's going to be a pretty powerful device, thinner than an iPhone. That really amazes me. Yeah. Other than that, it's relatively similar. You can get it in white instead of black. Yeah.
We were talking a little earlier about the HDMI output. How's that going to change? I mean, will that affect online? I know people are getting into online video now with the corporations and getting their content out there through YouTube and stuff. Is that going to have propel that along or not?
Well, I did a blog post for my Pioneer Press Tech blog about how the trip that I took with the original iPad might have been different if I had taken an iPad 2 along. So the web conferencing is one aspect, but I also when I go place, I do a lot of speaking engagements, a lot of presentations, and until now it's been a little frustrating with the iPad because when you hook it up to a projector, you can only do certain things like play video or use Keynote.
Okay.
But now there's full mirroring. If you hook the iPad up to an HD TV via an HDMI adapter that Apple provides, everything you see on the iPad screen, your audience can see on the big screen. It's fully mirrored, so you can show them anything: presentation, an app, a video.
Yeah.
The only problem with that, and apparently you can also do that with a VGA adapter if you're hooking the iPad up to a VGA projector.
Okay.
My understanding is the mirroring is supported there as well.
Okay.
But the only problem is with the iPad you have to use a clunky HDMI adapter that Apple will make you buy, for $40 or whatever.
Yeah.
The Motorola Zoom, which is a new Android tablet that just came out, also hooks up to an HD TV, but you can very elegantly just use an HDMI cable because the Zoom has a mini HDMI port, which the iPad lacks.
Okay.
So that's a little more elegant.
Right. So speaking of the Android platform, with the iPhone, Apple jumped out with a huge lead and a huge market share, and then Google came along with that Android and sort of ate away at that. And now they've done a pretty good job over a relatively short period of time doing that. But it's sort of the same situation now with the iPad, with the tablets. Apple's come out with a second edition. It's got a huge lead over everybody else. What is the competition like? Are we going to see the same thing play out, or does Apple own the tablet universe?
Well, at this specific point in time, Apple has a big advantage that has nothing to do with the hardware. It's all about the apps. There are tens of thousands of iPad customized apps, tablet-friendly apps that you can use on the iPad. There are very few Android apps that are tablet friendly.
Okay.
Most of them are just phone apps that get stretched out or don't run at all. Many apps just flat out will not run. Many Android phone apps will not run on an Android tablet.
Okay.
So the app situation is dire. Anybody who's buying an Android tablet is going to have a big problem. But just think back a few years ago when the Android phones were just starting to come out. The G1 was a terrible phone. There were not very many third-party apps. And then just fast forward in time, and now the Android phone platform is neck and neck with the iPhone. The Android market is just chock full of apps. And so everybody says, ooh, Apple has this huge lead. It does, but I fully expect that to change fairly dramatically in 3 years.
Right. So is the Chrome App Store, does that play into the tablet? Is that part of Google's tablet strategy?
The Chrome App Store is for people that use a Chrome on computers, Windows, Mac, and Google is working on something called the Chrome OS,
right?
Which is basically it takes this Chrome browser and makes it the whole operating system on a computer, and it's been giving away these Chrome OS notebooks to people to try out. And when you pop the lid on that notebook, you see the Chrome browser. That's all you see, and you live within the browser.
Okay.
Very, very, very intriguing. Completely different direction, than the tablets that everybody's crazy about.
It's Microsoft's nightmare realized.
Exactly, and I'm a big, like I said, I'm a big user of Google services. So if I open the Chrome OS laptop, my Gmail's right there, my Google apps are right there.
Right.
My Google Calendar's right there. Google Voice, everything that I use is there. So.
Yep.
There are some limitations currently. The Chrome OS, like video editing, is hard to do. Photo editing, but it's another technology that you should watch because it's very promising.
Right.
Yeah.
So when can we expect your review of the iPad 2?
I'm expecting Apple to send me one sometime next week. Okay. So shortly thereafter, I'll review it.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for taking the time.
Sure, no problem.